few years ago, I was driving back to Little Rock from a funeral in Memphis. It was late, middle of the night late, the kind of dark where the highway just disappears into fog and your headlights feel weak. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and starting to catch myself blinking too long behind the wheel. So a little after 2 a.m., I pulled off the interstate and stopped at a roadside motel outside Forest City, Arkansas. It was the kind of place you only stay at because you feel like you don't have another option. Peeling paint, a buzzing vacancy sign. Half the parking lot lights were out. The guy at the front desk looked annoyed that I was even there. He barely looked up when I walked in, just slid a key across the counter and said, "Room 114, end of the row." No smile, no nothing. The room itself was old, but not dirty, just depressing. Faded carpet, a loud AC unit, a stained lampshade, and one of those motel doors that opened straight to the parking lot. There was also an adjoining door on the far wall, the kind that connects two rooms. It had a deadbolt on my side, so I locked it without really thinking about it. Then I locked the main door, checked the window, and laid down fully dressed. I was too tired to even take my shoes off. I must have been asleep for maybe 40 minutes when I woke up to a sound. 3 knocks, not on the main door, on the adjoining door. I sat up immediately. At first, I thought maybe somebody in the next room had the wrong room or was drunk. Then I heard the doorknob move, slowly, like someone was testing it. I stayed still and listened. A few seconds passed. Then came another knock, this time harder. Then the handle turned again. My stomach dropped. I got out of bed, walked over quietly, and pressed my ear against the wall near the door. I could hear somebody on the other side breathing, not talking, not moving around, just standing there. I backed away and called the front desk from the room phone. It rang once and went dead. I tried again. Dead line. That's when I grabbed my phone. No signal, not even one bar. I remember just standing there staring at my screen, thinking, of course. Then I heard a key scrape at the main door. Not a knock, not footsteps. A key. Somebody was trying to unlock the door from outside. I ran over and looked through the gap in the curtains. There was a man standing right outside my room. He had one hand on the knob and the other shielding his face while he looked back toward the office, like he didn't want to be seen. I don't know if he heard me move or what, but he stepped back and walked off fast. Not running, just fast. I waited maybe 10 seconds, then I cracked the curtain again. He was gone. I grabbed my keys and wallet and didn't even bother with the rest of my stuff. I opened the door and went straight to my car. On the way there, I looked at the room next to mine. The curtains were open. The room was completely dark, and the parking spot in front of it was empty. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove straight to the front office. The guy behind the desk looked irritated when I came in. I told him somebody had just tried both my doors, the outside door and the adjoining one. He barely reacted. He just said, "Probably somebody confused." That answer made no sense. There was nobody checked into the room next to me. I had just looked. When I told him that, he paused for half a second too long, then said that room was out of service. So I asked him why someone had been inside it. He didn't answer. He just said if I was uncomfortable, I could leave. Not that he'd call the police, not that he'd check the cameras, just that I could leave. That was all I needed to hear. I got back in my car and drove until I found a gas station off the highway. I stayed there until sunrise. The next morning, I called the motel from a different phone to ask for a refund. A woman answered this time. When I told her the room number, she got quiet. Then she told me room 114 had been the subject of complaints before. She wouldn't say what kind, just complaints. I never got my money back, and I never stayed in a roadside motel like that again. But the part that still sticks with me is how calm the front desk guy was. Like none of it surprised him. Like he already knew exactly why someone was trying that door at 3 in the morning. I used to live alone in a small, one-bedroom apartment on the edge of Terre Haute, Indiana. It was a basement unit, so the windows were narrow and level with the ground outside. I liked the privacy, and the rent was cheap enough that I didn't mind the damp smell or the occasional silverfish. About 3 months after I moved in, things started to feel off. At first it was small stuff. I'd leave the kitchen light on and come home to find it off. I'd notice a drawer sitting slightly open when I was sure I had shut it. I blamed it on being tired. At the time, I was working around 60 hours a week at a warehouse, and I figured my brain was just fried. Then the smells started. Every now and then I'd walk into the bathroom and catch this weird metallic smell, almost like old pennies. Other times I'd smell cheap cologne, the kind that was way too heavy and definitely not mine. I checked the vents, thinking maybe it was coming from the upstairs neighbor. But every time, it seemed strongest near the utility closet in the hallway. The closet was tiny, just enough space for the water heater, a vacuum, and a few shelves. In the back, there was a wooden access panel screwed into the wall that led to the building's main plumbing lines. One Tuesday night, I got home late and went straight to the shower. While I was in there, I heard a dull thud from the hallway. It wasn't that loud, but in a quiet basement apartment, it sounded huge. I froze and listened. Nothing. So I finished showering, threw on a towel, and stepped into the hallway. That's when I saw the utility closet door. It was standing wide open. I know for a fact I hadn't opened it. That door always stuck, and usually took a hard pull just to get it moving. I stood there for a second, just staring at it. Then I walked over. The vacuum had been moved to the side. The shelves looked half cleared off, and the wooden access panel in the back was no longer screwed in. The screws were gone. The panel was just leaning against the wall. At that point, my heart was pounding. I reached out, pulled the panel aside, and shined my phone flashlight into the opening. Behind it wasn't just plumbing, it was a crawl space, a narrow one, but big enough for a person to move through. And about 5 feet back, tucked into a corner between the pipes, was a setup. There was a thin sleeping bag, a stack of food wrappers, and I recognized them immediately. They were from stuff in my own kitchen. Then I saw a small handheld mirror propped up against a pipe. It had been angled carefully. If the closet door was cracked open, whoever sat back there could see straight into my bedroom. I didn't stay another second. I ran out of that apartment in a towel, barefoot, faster than I've ever moved in my life. I didn't grab shoes, I didn't grab a bag. I just got to my car and drove to the nearest gas station to call the police. When officers searched the crawl space, the person was gone. But they found something that made me sick. Under the sleeping bag, they found a notebook. It wasn't a diary, it was a log. My name was written on the front. Inside were pages and pages of notes about me. What time I left for work, what time I usually got home, what I ate when I showered, even what lights I turned on at night. The last entry had been written that same night. It said, "He's home early, showering now." The police told me they thought the person had been living inside the crawl space for at least a couple of months. They believed he had access to maintenance areas in the building and had been slipping through the walls to watch tenants from inside the utility spaces. The worst part is they never caught him. By the time officers got there, he was already gone. They found an access point near the basement laundry room that led outside. I moved out the next day. I lost my deposit. I left furniture behind. I didn't care. I couldn't stand the thought of staying there another night or touching things that somebody had been watching me use for weeks. Now, anytime I move into a new place, I don't start by unpacking. I check everything: panels, closets, vents, anything that opens into a wall. Because once you realize somebody can live in the parts of your home you never look at, you stop assuming empty space is actually empty.